Hello and welcome. Today I want to go over some of the changes that they made to the Atlas that they didn't necessarily explicitly state in their reveal, and is not all of it is discussed in the patch notes. I also want to talk about why this is a great league for Path of Exile 2 players to get to Path of Exile 1. It marries the best parts of the two games in the perfect way, and I am just absolutely pumped for this league, so let's get into it. Now, one thing I saw when I was looking through the reveal is that the maps still have tiers, and it's a little bit strange to see the map tiers on the Atlas after they said that it didn't really matter, but I think it is affecting the drop rates of the maps, because one thing I noticed is that when you use the Void Stone on a quadrant, it applies to everything in that quadrant and it turns it all red. So likely everything in that quadrant will now drop as a T16 map instead of something less. Everything on the Atlas still has tiers, and it doesn't matter so much for being able to run that tier or any specific tier. It matters for getting the Atlas bonus, because certain tiers of maps require different rarity on your map to get the Atlas passives out of it, and it matters for the drop rates. So in their example, the Mesa map, which is a tier 8 map, even though they're running a tier 16 or whatever map in there, it'll still drop tier 8 maps. However, if you get a Void Stone, then you can put the Void Stone in that quadrant. It only applies to that quadrant from what I can see, and it'll drop tier 16 maps. It does seem like once you get a Void Stone in a quadrant, everything in that quadrant drops tier 16. It's not like it is now in the current Atlas, where if you put one Void Stone in, everything is scaled up 4 tiers. It seems like in the new system, it's going to make like the tier 1 maps in that quadrant drop as tier 16. So potentially you could just farm one quadrant of the Atlas and leave the rest. I think you're going to have two different strategies that you can use when you're doing the Atlas. You can either go in rings and work outward, or you can go in quadrants and then just rush to T16 and use those T16 maps in the other quadrants. So it does also mean that there's a lot of flexibility for players who do not like to run that many low tier maps, because for myself, I don't mind running a bunch of different maps. I don't mind Alkin going on the earlier maps, but I know a lot of people just like to rush towards T16s and make sure they can juice, and it means that you can farm T16s easier by just doing one quadrant and then potentially using all the T16s you farmed in the other quadrants, so you're not having to do as many low tier maps, which is something that hasn't been super accessible before in Path of Exile, because it can take so long to get the Void Stones that you might as well have been running the low tier maps. But now you could just target farm one Void Stone and then use that to farm all the T16 maps you need. But something else I noticed that they didn't discuss in their reveal, and they didn't put this in the patch notes either, this is just a secret I found, a quality of life that I don't think we have right now. They show you what crafting recipe you get for the map on the Atlas. Right now on the Atlas, you can see the T17 maps it drops and the divination cards. But they did display on their very, very quick hover over these maps that it shows you what crafting recipe you get from each map. So if you wanted to target farm certain crafting recipes, obviously you can always see which crafting recipe, which map you need for the crafting recipe from your crafting bench, but also now you can see on the Atlas tree which crafting recipes you need to farm and which you should go for. So I think that is a lovely addition to their UX improvements. So I'm really excited for this league. I also think it's the perfect league for people from Path of Exile 2 to get into Path of Exile 1, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the Atlas will feel more similar to Path of Exile 2 because you have something more like Waystones where the maps are just tiered and it doesn't denote a location, and the actual Atlas denotes the location. The physicality and the fog of war will also feel a little bit more like Path of Exile 2 while still having clear directions. Like, I love that each quadrant has its own objective. It doesn't feel like you're just traversing it for Atlas passives. It feels like you're traversing it to get to the Void Stones in each corner, and now you have a natural progression where each corner has some kind of goal for you to overcome. One other thing that Path of Exile 1 players should be aware of is that getting Void Stones is now a little bit different, because you have to kill both Exarch and Eater to get one Void Stone. You have to kill Maven to get the second void stone. You have to kill both elder and shaper to get the third void stone, or uber elder, but more likely people will kill elder and shaper. And then the fourth void stone is the incarnation of dread. So I think this is going to be probably a point of a lot of questions for people, is understanding like how the current map tiers work, understanding how the different void stones work. When you kill just Eater, you don't get anything, versus when you kill Eater and Exarch. I'm assuming they'll have some in-game quests to discuss this, and maybe this is where Kirak comes in. Maybe he will tell us what to do to get the void stones, but that system definitely works a little bit different now. Egan bosses with the incarnations, or shaper, elder, each way you go is going to feel like there is a start and an end, which I love. I love, love, love. And the biomes, the little, like, they called them blobs. The blobs you put on the map with the astrolabes that like add mechanics to your map, that also feels very Path of Exile 2, right? With the way that the towers used to work and the tablets. But I think this is much better implemented, and I love that it increases the difficulty of the other maps around it. But remember, if you only want to run one map, like I will probably run each thing in the blob so that I can do a variety of maps. But if you only want to run one map, there is an Atlas passive that just makes it so that when you finish one map, it doesn't remove the blob for that map. It doesn't remove the effect for the map you just ran. It removes it for a different map. So by running your map, you are just stacking more and more modifiers the more you run it. So it's going to be really good for both people who love to do a variety of maps like myself, or people who like to run the same map, which a lot of my guildmates love to do, as they just love to run dunes all day. So they can just allocate that one Atlas passive and run Omega Juice dunes to the ends of the earth, and it'll be awesome. The other reason this is going to be really good for Path of Exile 2 players to try out is because not only do you have something that feels like biomes and the Path of Exile 2 Atlas, but with goals and not endless, is you have a league mechanic that just enhances the other league mechanics. So you don't have something new to learn. Like, you can still explore all the existing content in the game while still feeling like you're getting something fresh, because you are doing the existing league mechanics, but each of them will have a little bit of a twist in the Mirage, so they're all going to feel a little bit extra special and unique. I think this is a great way to both celebrate the existing mechanics, which are super fun and we all know and love, and get people who wanted to try them but didn't want to feel left behind, or want to make sure that they're testing out the existing stuff, to still interact with the league in a satisfying way. One other detail that I saw in the reveal that I think probably will get overlooked by a lot of people, so I'd like to point it out here, is that Kirak in the epilogue shows the new Atlas instead of the old Atlas, which he shows right now. And so they did update him at least to be looking at the correct map instead of looking at the old map, which definitely would have felt a little silly, but now he has an updated Atlas at his desk, so yay for Kirak. One question they didn't answer is what happens to the Kirak special modifiers. Like right now you can capture harvest beasts. How do you do that in the new system? My current theory is that the shaped regions, the blobs, one of the modifiers they apply onto your map could be one of those. Like, for example, if you do the an Einhar blob, one of the last mods of the Einhar blob will be area can contain capturable harvest beasts. So I'm guessing that those special modifiers will be included on the astrolabe, but I couldn't say for sure. I have to assume, unless they're removing the harvest beast crafts, which I would highly doubt they are, because they don't really have a reason to. I'm guessing those just got moved onto astrolabes and other modifiers you can get in other areas, but I guess we'll find out once it all ends up in PoEDB and we data mine it all. In the Q&A that if you like split a blob down the middle, then the other part of the blob dies. So it's not like you get two little blobs that you have to play around. You basically like sacrifice some of your juice in order to do the rest of it. So you could kind of decide, like, if it if the content is getting too hard, you can split your blob and then kill off part of it, I guess the smaller part probably, and then just focus on the other part, versus like if you want to actually omega juice one part of it. The only thing I wonder about that is if, like, for example, you are using the point on the passive that allows it to like destroy or to like complete a random node in the blob, whether you could potentially like kill off part of your blob that way. I assume yes. So potentially it's better to be manually doing these nodes instead of leaving it to random chance and running the same map, but probably not by a big degree. It's mostly about luck and getting unlucky, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think I will probably do a little bit of micromanaging with the blob. I don't know, we'll have to see how it shakes out. So the idea there is that you get some like shorter term goals than what we have now, but it'll be fun to play around with what modifiers you get, what's the best modifier, and whether it is even worth it to like maximally juice one map. So I think this is going to be an insanely good update. We're getting just as much juice, if not more than before. We're getting very clear, distinct goals for different parts of the atlas. It makes the atlas feel more like a physical space than just a list of maps. It removes all the annoying bits, like needing to do map trades with people for completion. You don't have to do as many annoying unique maps, which means Malkoon is off the roster. You still have clear zones that you can farm with new mods to explore, and they buffed a bunch of atlas passives, so it feels like there's so many atlas passives, like the shaping the mountain, shaping the skies, like those ones are now giving you more monsters in your map, which is great, and they're trying to improve the ground loot. Like, I just think this is going to be an insanely good league for mapping and juicing maps, and I am planning to do probably an equal amount of mapping and delve, because at this point I can't not do maps, but also I can't not do delve. They seriously buffed the amount of sulfite you get in your maps, so you're just going to get an insane amount of sulfite. You're going to be able to delve so much, and I don't know how I'm gonna do all this content. It's just, the patch notes are so big. I don't know what to do. I'm so hyped. We're just gonna be playing for a month straight. So I'll see you there on League Start. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.